Because I need all of these three things to be the same size all the time, then I'm going to save out the entire size of the file. So if I go over here, and there's some different ways you can generate a web image. You can either go to export, and right now you can say quick export as PNG, and it's supposed to know that you want transparency. Um, you could also say export as. Let's take a look at that real quick. If you say export as, it's going to give you a bunch of options, and you want to make sure that you're not choosing JPEG, you want PNG, and you want to make sure transparency is selected. So in this particular case, this isn't good, this isn't what we want, because look what it's doing, it's actually giving us both sets of hills. So I'm going to hit cancel, we don't want that. We need to make sure that we're only getting what we want. So let's say that the first thing that we're going to export is just the rear hills. Okay, so let's go over here and we'll say export. Let's do export as, just so you can see the features. And then it'll just show you this. And now we need to tell it to be a PNG with transparency, which is good. And this is where we have to decide how big do we actually want the final thing to be. And it will give you an idea over here. It says it's going to be 170, basically 9 kilobytes. If you think about all three of those files being approximately that size, then that's about 600 kilobytes for the images on the file or on the web page. And that might be fine if what you're expecting is a desktop experience where maybe they're on a wireless network or faster. And so you just have to make that decision. And if not, if you want to make it a little bit smaller, you can, but just remember that the smaller you make this on larger screens where it's scaling full screen, it's going to be a worse looking quality. So 2000 is what I'm comfortable with for right now. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and say export all. Right, because that's what I have available. And what I'm going to call this PNG is I'm going to call it road dash rear dash hills. And remember not to put spaces in your file names, because if you do that, then you're going to have a nightmare trying to make links to them. So it's going to be called road dash rear dash hills. Okay. And if you wanted to, like, you know, have an idea of like what order is it going to be, like is it going to be on the bottom, or is it going to be the middle, or is it going to be the top, what you could also do is you could put middle, so that we know that that's the middle layer, for instance, if that's helpful. Right, so that's an option if you want. I'm not going to do that because I know how I want to do it, but let's just go ahead and export that. And all right, so then it shows me that it actually created the file. Right, and so we could look at it. Looks like what we expected it to be. All right, so now if I toggle this off and I toggle on this bottom, the bottom road transparency, then I can go up here to File and I can export, save as, or export as. And I want to use the same settings. And you see, now this one's a whole lot bigger. 750 kilobytes. It's because it has less transparency. So this is where you might go, well, that's really, 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 really big. So you would want to consider whether or not your delivery method is going to be able to support that kind of bandwidth, because this isn't the only other one that we have. We actually also have the one for the sky. And if we're going to just use the full graphic, then that's something that we need to really think about here. So that's a pretty big file. I'll go ahead and I'll just say export all just for the sake of time. What I could have also done is explored seeing what happened if I go down to, like, say 1800 and I click here, and it didn't change the file size that much. So I think I'm just going to stick with my size that I'm happy with, and we'll go with that and save it as a transparent PNG. Okay. And then this one I'm going to call road, and I'll call it dash top layer. Okay. Because that way I know that it is the layer that's supposed to go on the very, very top. And I'll just say export. Okay. And then this we could, if we wanted, we could see how big it would be. if we tried to export this whole thing out as a PNG, I just want to show you something though. The thing is, if you remember from other lessons, PNGs, the lossless PNGs that are not indexed graphics, remember in 8-bit files an indexed color mapping graphic. The other types of PNGs, 24s and 32s, are lossless and they have three color channels, and the transparency also has an extra alpha channel. File sizes are much bigger. You see that this is 895. Well, because we have this whole file, we don't need transparency. So if we took it and turned it into a JPEG, you're going to see the difference is like cut in half in the file size. So I can kind of handle that. Something else that you could test if you wanted, here I'm going to hit cancel, and as if we wanted to try and see, let's duplicate background again, and I'm just going to call this one sky, for instance. Like if we really cared, I'm going to be really sort of quick and dirty about this, and I'm just going to basically turn this whole bottom section right here, and I'm just going to hit the delete key. All right, and you'll see that it's basically gone. So if we leave some of this information, it might not be that big a deal. And let's just see what would happen if we tried to export this. So if we go export, export as, and let's see what would happen. Right, if we did that as a PNG with transparency, see that's 192 KB. So technically, if we wanted to make this our background image for the entire page, we could. I didn't do that in my demo, but the file size is actually smaller, so it makes sense to actually put that in the very, very back. So I'm going to go ahead and just save that out, and we'll just call it road, and I'll call it body BG because that's what it would be, and I'll call it BG, and then I'll put sky. Okay, that means it's going to be in the body background, or the background of the actual body tag, and it is the sky. Okay, so let's just go ahead and say export. All right, and then I'm going to save this file again. Oops, not that one. We'll save it as a PSD file, so it saves all of our stuff here. Let's hit cancel, and we are going to tell it to save the alpha channels. That's why it kept making a copy, is because I had it set as a copy. I wasn't paying attention. So if I just save alpha channels, we'll replace it, and that should be good. Okay. All right. All right, I'm going to end this demonstration here so that we can have a clean break with the Photoshop tutorials, and then you can move forward, and we're going to start getting the stuff into code.